Really, the focus is on positivity and, just getting up, getting dressed, and getting out.
Welcome to the Strokecast. A Generation X stroke survivor explores rehab, recovery, the frontiers of neuroscience, and how to peel a banana with one hand.
Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to episode 136 of the Strokecast. Today's episode is brought to you by the fine folks at Modus Nova. To find out if Modus Nova can help you recover the use of limb after a stroke, go ahead and visit strokecast.com/Modus Nova. And by the fine folks at Like-Minded. To learn if this membership program for brain injury survivors is right for you, visit strokecast.com/Like-Minded. Why are accessible clothing and AFO-friendly shoes so ugly? I mean, they don't have to be. This week, I talk with Lainie Ishbia from Trendable.com. Laine lives with a Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, a degenerative neurological condition that impacts the dexterity in her hands and gives her foot drop, among other conditions. She has become an expert in finding clothes and accessories to help folks with disabilities and modifying other clothes and accessories to make them more disability-friendly. You can be disabled and stylish. To learn more, let's meet Laine. So Laine, thank you so much for joining us here on Strokecast this week.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be on a podcast. So pretty cool.
It's always interesting when you go from being the podcaster to the guest.
Yes, I can't decide which is more nerve-wracking, but maybe being the guest, I think.
A guest can be a little more nerve-wracking, but at least when you're done with the conversation, you're done. You can
right. No editing for me.
So, I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about your podcast in a little bit, but this all started let's go back about another 10 years in social media trends, and you've got a blog, the Trendable website. So what is Trendable?
Trendable, it's about 3 years old, actually, and it's a website really geared for people with disabilities who want to look and feel their best, which is a lot of people, right? So I help people find, for example, shoes to fit AFOs, fashion that's comfortable and easy to put on. I also do, write on the topics of self-esteem and body image and give tips and hacks for, being able to do everything you want to do, maybe in a different way. So, for example, I have blogs on going to a cocktail party, which we can fortunately now do, and how to balance if you have difficulty balance, like how to balance discreetly, how to go to a pool or a resort and navigate that. So it's a little bit of everything, but really the focus is on positivity and, just getting up, getting dressed, and getting out.
That's awesome. I think and that's one of those things too that becomes fairly unique to the community of folks with disabilities, is that most people, when you talk about here's how you go to a party and here's how you balance, they instantly think you're talking about, okay, now let's make sure we're talking to a variety of people, or we're making sure not to drink too much. We're just trying to balance all of these social needs. Whereas folks in our community, we're talking about how not to physically fall.
Exactly. There's I don't know what that's called. I was an English major a million years ago, but I don't know, I don't know what it's called. But basically, yes, there's a double meaning and relevance to people with disabilities. It's not just about like balancing your life and balancing your nerves, which people without disabilities certainly have going to a party if they have some social anxiety or just in general don't know what to expect. People with disabilities have additional anxieties like what they're going to wear. Where's the bathroom going to be? Are there going to be stairs? Will there be an elevator? What will the grass be like? Is it going to be, even, that kind of thing.
And yeah, and even when we start thinking about things like so many people are shoes off households.
Yes.
And how does that impact folks with disabilities and just navigating just those awkward social conventions?
Right. That's 100%. And actually, that's another blog that I once wrote on winter, because I live in Michigan and there's snow and ice, and certainly people don't want that all over their houses. And people with disabilities tend to avoid going to other people's houses because they don't want to have that awkward feeling or being asked to do something that's actually quite a bit of an effort, right? To put on shoes, to carry different ones, to put them on, to have a chair to do that. And so a lot of that is really about, assertiveness, knowing, how to say things without feeling like ashamed of what you're saying or how you're saying it, and being able to just be proactive before you go to anything.
And that's one of those things that becomes interesting too. I think, I know in the experience of most folks in the stroke community, we come about our disabilities rather suddenly and later in life. Mm-hmm. Other communities of folks who may be born with their disabilities, they're not necessarily navigating that sudden shift in their social role the way other folks are.
Absolutely. I mean, for myself, I have a neuromuscular condition that is inherited. It's called Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease. But even though I inherited it, it's a slowly progressive disease. So I didn't wear leg braces up until the age of 30. I wasn't exactly athletic, maybe the opposite, but I didn't have any, I could do some things obviously that I can't do today. And everyone is different, right? I have a lot of people who follow the website and follow our social media platforms that have had strokes, who now have peripheral neuropathy as a result, or neuropathy of any kind. And I don't, everyone handles things differently, but certainly coming upon something suddenly without preparation is it's a whole different, mental and emotional, you require different skills.
Let's get to the big question then, first of all, which is, why is so much accessible gear and clothing so ugly?
Yes. Well, I know. And expensive too, right? Like, not only is it ugly, it's expensive. It's unfortunate. I think that, the old stereotypes about people with disabilities, hopefully they're changing, but they still really exist. And that is that people are at home, they have nothing to do, they're old, they're, not caring about their appearance necessarily, they just need function. What we're seeing, obviously, especially with the help of Instagram and all of these platforms where there's so many younger people, and I'm not young, by the way, I'm 50 years old, but I care about my appearance and I care about fashion, and there's no way I would wear a lot of what is and was available.
Well, I think you mentioned that the growth in social media around this has certainly had an impact. We've always had young people with disabilities in our world and in our communities. It's just, you didn't get to see as many of them, and many of us didn't have the voice that Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and the podcasting space has given to us now.
Absolutely. It's incredible.
So, and I think even the way I found Trendable was actually stumbled upon a link to a post you had done about AFO friendly shoes. Mm-hmm. With your experience, how was it you came to actually start the site to actually share these experiences? So I am a former social worker. I have a master's in social work, and I used to work with adolescents and women. Part-time while I raised my kids. I was a therapist and did a lot of preventative programming and school outing programming on self-esteem and body image. In addition, I myself had, during this time, had to start wearing leg braces. And my experience in
in my first experience, I said to say, getting leg braces, where I was handed these big, clunky, white plastic things at the time, because I didn't know better. I didn't know what to ask for. I didn't know that there were options. So when I was handed them and I started crying and asked this orthotist person, well, what can I wear with these? And his response at the time was really just, pointing to sneakers, New Balance sneakers. And I remember feeling instantly just depressed. I mean, I couldn't picture my whole life wearing, sneakers, by the way, now you can wear with dresses, you can wear with anything. They're very trendy. But, when I was first started wearing leg braces, sneakers were just for, doing sports. They weren't for, athleisure wear didn't exist. So I was devastated, and I was like, well, this, and his response too was being shocked that I was concerned. It felt like I was, being only superficial, when in fact it encompasses so much. How you look and feel in what you are wearing makes a huge difference in how you carry yourself, your relationships, your general well-being, your ability to, your desire to interact with people in the world. So I realized pretty quick after wearing these plastic big braces that, even though the manufacturer of the brace company says to wear, sneakers with laces tied, which, by the way, if you have hand dexterity issues like I do, isn't so easy. So I just started playing with options. I was like, well, I wonder if they'll fit in these. And, they wasn't back then with those big plastic bracelet ones. It's not like I had a ton of options, but I had different options. And, there wasn't Google or anything like that, but I went into plus size stores. I'm not plus size, but I was like, oh, well, I need wide width. And because the brace is what does the work, it's not, when you wear braces, it's the brace that's supposed to help with your foot drop. It's not the shoes. I was like, well, I can buy really inexpensive, trendy shoes and they fit. I can hack them in a way, put elastic across it or do things to make it stay on my foot. And, I think of, fast forward many years later, my mom she passed away, but she had a lot of difficulty getting dressed, putting on her pants, gripping her pants to pull them up. But she also was very, very busy and active and had a big social life. And we together figured out how to put loops, have someone sew loops in the inside of her pants so that she could slip her wrists into her pants to pull them up and pull them down. And this was before adaptive fashion was a thing. And so I started this blog because I realized after talking to several people that, what I think is a no-brainer, easy thing, for other people, they just don't, they're stuck and they don't think about different ways of doing things. They need help to do that. So Trendable came about because I realized, what? I know what fits into my leg braces and what would fit into most people's leg braces. I know the clothing that's easy to get on without having to buy the ugly, quote, adaptive fashion that's out there. Why can't I just wear what everybody else wears? And I do. I just hack the clothing so that it works for me. And that's what Trendable, mostly helps people do. Gives them tips for being able to wear what they want to wear and have a sense of style that isn't defined by having to wear leg braces.
I know one of the challenges I've had with the AFO is I already naturally had very large feet, surprising for my height, and was already at the top of the spectrum on that. And then with the AFO, that I need to bump up another size and bump up in width. Oh, and I'm only wearing one AFO, so now the other foot is in a shoe that's way too big for it, and it's just you're trying to balance all of that, while suddenly dealing with this impact to, you mentioned the importance of self-esteem and how we see ourselves. And when we enter this world where everything else gets questioned, where having to deal with what does this do to my sense of who I am? now that I'm in this world, now that my career may have to change, my relationships may have to change. I may have to go from being a caregiver to a care receiver. And on top of all that, adding how I look and how I go out in the world becomes just that one either little thing that can either be just that one more straw on the camel's back, or it can be one piece of light in our day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's huge. It's huge. I mean, obviously there's so much science to back that up. So it's no longer just Lainie saying, oh, it makes a big difference. But, we know that, what you choose to wear and how you feel about yourself in those clothes and in those shoes, really does make a difference in how you feel about yourself and how others see you. And remember, clothes and shoes and all of that, when you're comfortable, they're a common denominator with other people too. So, people with disabilities, most people want to be seen as themselves, right? And like, if what's being noticed, the very first thing you see me are these shoes that don't fit who I am or who I want to present to the world, I'm not carrying myself very tall. I'm insecure really in that dynamic. But if I'm wearing something that feels like me, that feels powerful, that feels like who I am, then it carries into how I am with that person and with the world.
So when you're looking at different products to feature or to modify in your own life or to highlight in Trendable, what are some of the core principles that go into the accessible clothing or that go into making things work for people with disabilities?
Probably many of your listeners do wear leg braces or AFOs of some sort. So I can start with that because that's different. But, in terms of finding shoes for AFOs, obviously, a lot of people know to look for wide widths, to look for removable insoles, but also there's shoes that have removable footbeds. And you don't, like if you're going to a shoe store, a lot of times the people selling the shoes don't even know that shoe has a removable footbed. It's not something that's obvious. So
I was going to say, I'm not even sure exactly what the footbed of a shoe is.
It's literally the entire bottom of the shoe. So you can get more depth. Obviously, if the whole sole, that whole big, picture, like Birkenstocks, for example, right? So they take up a lot of space with that sole. It pops out on some of their shoes. And so then you are walking on a very flat surface, which is good for a lot of people who wear AFOs. Because as I said, the AFO is what's supposed to do the work for if you have foot drop or balance issues. So that gives someone who has a bulkier brace the depth to be able to have that foot and that AFO fit inside the shoe without it falling off. Other things to look for is obviously like a wider toe box, because a lot of people have funky toes and need that. Openings are really important. You can remove the tongue of a shoe if you needed to. That takes up a lot of space in a shoe. So removing that or having, reconfiguring it. I personally look for I wear either flat shoes, or I wear for women, men too, if they want to, platform, which is not like the platform in the 70s sense of a platform shoe, but an elevated shoe that is all even all the way across. So for those people who miss wearing heels, when you've had a stroke and you now can't wear heels ever, it gives you the height, but it's
without making you walk on your toes.
Exactly. But you're on a completely flat, just elevated shoe. And for someone like myself who is works out and has good core strength, that works for me and it works for many people. Obviously, if you don't have core strength, then I wouldn't recommend it because you don't want to fall. But if you are all up, it's the same thing. So that's with shoes. Those are just some things with shoes. Big and tall stores are a good place to find trendy shoes. I buy most of my shoes online, which is why Trendable exists. I don't usually find shoes that work for me in your regular store. It's really through trial and error. And most of these stores have like easy returns, like Amazon or whatever. They'll, free. You just drop it off at a UPS and done. So I order a bunch and then see what works. You can always add things to shoes like elastic to keep them on, padding. There are companies, you mentioned like having one AFO, and a lot of people are in that same position. There's Zappos and Friendly Shoes and Billy's Footwear, and they all have lines of one shoe that you can buy 2 different sizes. So you could buy one shoe in a size 8 and another one in a 6. Also, you could fill the shoe if you were to get 2 shoes of the same size. They make shoe fillers so that the other shoe that isn't in the AFO doesn't, has more room taken up with a shoe filler.
You don't think about it until you have to, obviously, which is the same way with most of this stuff.
Right.
But even with, when I started, I ended up just adding a second insole to my non-AFO shoe, because if you suddenly have an 1/8 of an inch or a 1/4 of an inch difference in height due to the thickness of the AFO, that can long-term cause challenges with hips and pelvis and back, and just being
right.
in addition to the balance challenges.
Yes, because your other parts of your body are doing the work to accommodate, and definitely being mindful of that is a good thing for sure. And in terms of clothing, I mean, most of the clothing that I put out there, even though I do have many sections on the web on Trendable with adaptive fashion brands, and there are several that are fashionable. Obviously, Tommy Hilfiger has come up with a line of clothing. I mean, it's not my style, but it might be someone else's. However, everything can be adaptable for the most part. So if you have zippers can be replaced with Velcro on most things. Buttons can be replaced easily with buttons that are magnets. Shirts, button-down shirts. Now there's a million. That is what Tommy Hilfiger is good for, because Magna Ready has magnetic button shirts for men who choose to wear button-downs or want to wear button-down shirts, or women. And I mentioned the loops. The loops are a great thing for socks if people have difficulty getting socks on. You can easily put 2 loops, have someone put loops on each side of the sock so that it helps you to pull them up.
If you don't sew yourself or have somebody in your household who can sew, it's become so much easier to find folks who can go ahead and do that stuff, either through your online community, or a lot of folks may not realize this, but many, especially independent dry cleaners, do also do tailoring.
Yep.
And can do, everything. Look for anybody who does hemming services or things like that. Even if they don't list sewing to make things more accessible, if you come to them with the project, odds are they can do it.
Yes. And that is also how one of the things in the early days of wearing leg braces myself, there was a company that sold liners for braces. Now that company only sells them directly to medical facilities, and it's a whole thing. But they were like $40 each sock, and I wore them to death. So I was going through a lot of these socks, for each sock being $30. I took this prototype. I took an example of this sock that basically lined that plastic brace and then folded over at the top, so it allowed you to wear an open-toed shoe or a sandal. And I took it to a seamstress who, just like you said, that's not what they do. They don't make things from scratch, but they were happy to. Once I brought in what I wanted, she got the material to be similar, like moisture wicking, and she copied that design. So you are 100% right. There's a million tailors and seamstress people, and all you do is, tell them what you want. And I'm pretty sure for a small fee, you can get it done.
Exactly. And folks often love having a new challenge or a new way to expand their skills and to just try to do something a little bit different.
Absolutely. They'll feel good too, having done such a great thing for you.
Absolutely. And your local support groups can be a great resource for just asking other folks with similar conditions where they go to get their stuff done.
Yep.
So we talk about a lot about clothing, a lot about, one of the other things that I know I've found is when it comes to other mobility aids, we're starting to see there's some really interesting stuff happening around wheelchairs. And I know there's this company out of Ireland that is doing some really interesting things with wheel covers. A lot of folks are very reluctant to carry a cane or a walking stick and get embarrassed by that. I know I've ended up getting most of my canes out of fashionablecanes.com. Have you encountered any other good resources for other mobility aids when we start getting beyond AFOs that may look good or stylish or be fun?
Oh, my goodness. Well, first of all, there are so many wonderful disability advocates and influencers out there who are like, their style is coming through in their mobility aids. They've chosen to like bling them out or, carry a pink cane because pink is their signature color, putting bedazzled jewels on them. And as you had said, there are companies that sell cool looking things like leopard canes. In fact, my dad, who also passed away, he used to use, he was a big Detroit Lions fan, and we got him a Detroit Lions cane, someone on Etsy. Etsy, by the way, is a great resource for a lot of this stuff. So if you're not on Etsy, that's local, not local, those are nationwide artists and crafters who make all sorts of things. And if you put in there cane, bling, rhinestone, guaranteed there are people who make those on Etsy. And that's where we got my dad's like sports fan canes and these walkers now, I forgot what the name of it is, I forgot how you pronounce it, but I've seen some pretty cool looking wheelchairs and canes and walkers that are very modern looking and very cool. They almost look like, futuristic, and, people are like, what do you have? I want one. It looks like you're on it looks cool. People a lot of times don't even know what it is. And, they're like, wow, what do you have? Yeah.
When you get out of a hospital or when you first start using different mobility aids, you're going to get what the insurance company is going to sign off for, which is going to be the generic, basic function, probably ugly type of solution. And you're off on your own to go find something that's really going to meet your style and still give you the safety you need.
Yeah. And if you don't have the funds to buy some of these, some of them are obviously very expensive, especially when we're talking about the wheelchairs and some of these very high-tech walkers, take that hospital grade generic one and put your own style on it if you want to. Some people don't choose to, but others do. And, tie-dye, put fabric around it, accessorize it in some way that is you.
I've also found too that one of the other things you can do is some of the very basic canes, just the little $8 ones you can get at the corner drugstore. You can always just pick up a bunch of those and a whole bunch of stickers, and maybe even have kids in your life go ahead and decorate that for you, or do different ones for different holidays. You're not just limited to just one. You can have as many as you want.
Yes. There's, especially with my CVS reward points, I could, if they don't get thrown away.
So, in addition to doing the website, we mentioned earlier that you also host a podcast.
I do.
Tell us a little bit about that show.
Sure. So my partner in speaking, my speaking partner and friend, Estella Lugo, who's this awesome person. She works for the Hereditary Neuropathy Foundation, and they help people primarily with Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease. But we came together several years ago and realized we have a lot in common and we have different styles that really mesh well together. And so we started to we created a podcast, and it's called Embrace It with Lainie and Estella. Yep. Embrace It. And we do all sorts of things. A lot of times we have guests on. Actually, right before we're recording this right now, Estella and I recorded a podcast with a disability attorney, had guests, fashion. We've had guests come on. We had a person on who's traveled the entire world in a wheelchair by herself.
Wow.
We had like a makeup artist who has no use of her hands. She uses her feet to do makeup. So we've had some incredible people and influencers in the disability world join us. And we want people to walk away like you do, like this awesome podcast. We want them to walk away inspired, like hopeful, positive, and with practical tips they can use. Estella and I also do speaking engagements. So before COVID, we spoke at Pinterest for their disability staff conference on disability, not just for people with disabilities, but they had a conference at Pinterest in San Francisco. We've been to the Abilities Expo and spoken. We've spoken to the Health Union, different organizations. And our focus there is really on like doing workshops on helping people to learn how to ask for help and to be their own advocate. So the podcast, Trendable, and the speaking engagements all basically are the same theme, which is, no one is going to advocate for you but you. And so you need to feel good in your own skin. You need to be confident. You need to be the best you so that, you can get what you want. And part of that is feeling humble, being humble, and sometimes in situations that aren't comfortable, being able to say, I need help. I'm going to this fitness class and, I can do the exercises. I just can't, attach this device to this thing. And people are happy to help. So that's really what the podcast and what the speaking engagements are about.
So what's been your biggest surprise to come out of the podcast?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I guess what surprises me most, what has surprised me most through this podcast is I didn't realize the extent of how many amazing people are doing, young people are doing such amazing things with disabilities and for others with disabilities. I mean, we were just talking about the fact that in the world, for example, of discrimination, and there's people who are just every day out there fighting for others and doing all of this to avoid ableism and to, eradicate all of these stereotypes about people with disabilities. If you see these people that we've had on as guests and that you've probably had on, you're just like, wow, these people are empowered, and they are out there doing fabulous work.
I continue to be just blown away by just the amazing people out there in these communities. And I know as a show host, it's a privilege, and it's a humbling privilege at that, to get to talk to, such amazing folks.
I mean, the fact that we have these platforms for these conversations to take place is just amazing. That handicap stereotype of long ago, we're getting rid of. We're getting rid of that by you and I and others coming out there and people being able to identify with us and people saying, oh, wow, I didn't even know you had a disability. And I think it's incredible. It's just really, we're slowly but surely moving into a space where hopefully ableism will be gone, someday. Even though I do this for a living, even though I'm constantly talking about disability and teaching about how to advocate for yourself, we all have days or events or things that happen. And then you're just like, whoa, I feel uncomfortable. I'm in the,
Exactly.
I have a teenager who just graduated. Well, my youngest just graduated from high school. So I'm in the graduation party mix right now with lots of graduation parties. And one of the graduation parties I went to just last week, I walked in and it was outside, obviously. I walked out of my car and I was like, oh, crap. Like this party, they had no tables. It was it was on, this person has a side lawn and not a backyard or a front yard. So it was a side yard. And there was probably 100 people, 200 people, all in the side yard. And the grass was slanted and they had no high top tables to lean on. They had food trucks, but like people were walking around holding their food. And I felt in that moment like, holy crap. Like if I'm this anxious and this, like I get, this is crappy. Who has a party and doesn't have put tables out, like, if anything, I hope that I help people in my world. Obviously I didn't help that friend to know like what to do in general when you don't know what people have, but everyone has something. And there's a lot of people out there who have issues with balance, and they're not just 100 years old, right? Like and people just don't think about it. They just don't think about it. So, my goal is to help my small world around me realize, you can make people's life a lot easier and more enjoyable and have a better event for everyone when you just put some thought into ability.
A lot of the value that we can all get from everything from just our individual discussions to our individual social media platforms. You don't have to run a podcast to be able to share these stories. Just sharing your own stories around, 10, 20, 30, 50 people you may have in your network, friends and family, that when everybody's doing that drives the further awareness.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the condition you're living with?
Sure.
It's not one that I've heard of before.
Yeah. So Charcot-Marie-Tooth sounds a lot more mysterious than it actually is. It's not a dental condition. It's
I was going to say, it sounds like a surfing incident.
Life would be a lot easier if it was just involving teeth. But no, it's actually named after the three doctors that discovered it. Charcot, Marie, and Tooth were their names. And it's a very common but often misdiagnosed neuromuscular condition. It actually is as common as MS. It affects 1 in like 2,500 people. And it can present in a lot of different ways, just like a lot of, conditions and disabilities do. There are, different types. I have the most common type of type 1A, and it primarily affects your peripheral nerves. So for me, that's my hands and my feet only. And because the nerves are so damaged and basically gone, the only way, there's no cure, there's no treatment. But if you stay active and keep your muscles active, it can accommodate for nerves that are damaged for me. So I, really make a point of trying to exercise most days, lift weights, do things, and to slow that progression.
Interesting. So it's kind of like, in some respects, it's a nerve condition at the opposite end of the nervous system from what stroke survivors have. Whereas in my case, it's the nerves that are in my head that died from that incident. There's literally nothing wrong with my hand, nothing wrong with my foot. I just can't use them because the top end of those nerves, that connection is gone. Whereas in your...
That is interesting. You know what? You're right. It's your brain isn't sending that signal to those hands and those legs. And it's my hands and legs that aren't sending the signal back to my brain. The brain is okay, but the feet and the hands won't do the
Exactly. It's, never would have thought I'd have ended up learning this much about the nervous system.
It's amazing. We all are like armchair physicians, right?
So when, like I said, you were born with this condition, and it was degenerative, you started using your AFOs around age 30 or so.
Yep.
Were you resistant to moving into the AFOs? Was that something you
totally.
wish you had done years
my
before? Or?
No, I was so resistant. At the time, I was living in Chicago. I was, I was young and getting married at the time. And I was able to wear shorts. And, that's not to say that people with AFOs can't wear shorts, right? You still can.
Yeah.
I don't choose to show my AFOs except for the entire world on my blog, but on my everyday life, I don't walk around showing my AFOs. Not because of shame, but truly because I don't need to lead with them. Like that's not how I want to lead. And I have that option, whereas a lot of people obviously don't. Yes, I was totally resistant and put them on a shelf. And then when I kept falling and tripping and the foot drop, became unmanageable. And with foot drop, you can feel like you're carrying around an elephant, your feet drag and feel so heavy. I finally was forced really to wear those AFOs. And, there is way more positive than negative that comes from having properly fit AFOs. My husband runs marathons. I could, if I chose to, which I don't, I could probably walk one, so I would never have been able to do that without them. I can't walk outside my house without shoes for more than, 100 feet without the AFOs. But with the AFOs, I can do anything and everything for the most part that I want to do.
And that brings us to our hack of the week. But first, let's talk about Modus Nova. Modus Nova makes the Modus Hand and Modus Foot. These are robotic, air-powered exoskeletons that help you exercise your affected limb through custom video games. We know you need thousands of repetitions to build new connections in the brain to recover the use of a limb. The Modus Hand and Modus Foot help you get those repetitions while challenging you to beat your high score and using AI technology to provide just the right assistance or resistance to your affected limb to make sure you're getting the best workout you can. To learn more and see if Modus Nova is right for you, visit strokecast.com/Modus Nova. Use promo code STROKECAST to get 10% off your first month. And now back to our hack of the week.
You can get at the dollar store mini lint brushes, and you can use them. I keep one in my purse, and if I drop a penny or like the grocery person teller won't hand me change, they put the change down and I can't pick up the change, I just use the little lint brush, which is sticky, to get it and pick it up.
Lainie, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us this week. And I want everybody to go over and check out the resources over at trendable.com.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome. And definitely put a hyphen after trend-able.
Trend-able.
Yeah,
and you'll find those links over at strokecast.com/trends.
Thank you. Oh, you are very professional, and you have a definite good voice for doing podcasts. So it was a pleasure to meet you, and thank you so much for having me on.
Before I share some additional thoughts, I do want to talk about our other sponsor, Like-Minded. Like-Minded is a living, breathing recovery program. When you join Like-Minded, you get access to live, virtual workshops to help with all aspects of recovery. You can attend sessions run by stroke and TBI survivors, by occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech-language pathologists, and more. Many of the session leaders like Ella Sophia, Maddie Niebank, Joe Borges, Mimi Hayes, and even Jane herself have been guests on the Strokecast. You also get access to replays of those sessions and a private text messaging group for all your questions, so you can continue to get the follow-up and the information and really just the support that you need. Members also get free membership to NeuroFit VR, a virtual reality interface to help you with cognitive skills after a brain injury. Get the support, accountability, and direction you crave and deserve for just $45 a month. Use promo code STROKECAST for 20% off your first month. Did you know that July is Disability Pride Month? What does that even mean? Well, I'm personally, I'm a little fuzzy on the origins of this celebration of disability for the month of July. It appears to have started back in 2015 when the mayor of New York City wanted to recognize the importance of the landmark civil rights legislation of the Americans with Disabilities Act in the United States. Ultimately, I see Disability Pride Month as an opportunity to celebrate the lives and opportunities we have today. Now, that doesn't mean we're better people because of our disabilities, though many of us have become better people in this whole process, or at least we feel we have. It also doesn't mean we just want people to tell us how inspiring we are for being disabled and choosing to continue to, live. You see, what it really is the chance to recognize the importance of the civil rights legislation that is just a start to reducing the barriers to full participation in society. It's a chance to remind HR departments that diversity and inclusion programs that do not also address ableism and include the disabled are flawed and wrong. In the United States, the Americans with Disabilities Act is an important piece of civil rights law. And it's a great start, but we still have a long way to go. And yet, despite the problems with the ADA, or rather the implementation of the ADA, as I talk with people around the world, I've come to understand more about just how bad physical, cultural, and economic barriers can be for folks in other countries. Disability Pride Month is a month to recognize how far disabled rights have come and to make sure the temporarily abled population recognizes the importance of equal rights and equal access for all around the globe. Whether we speak up literally or metaphorically, what we have to say matters in voice, in print, in sign, in eye blinks, in whatever method we choose to communicate. We are a part of society and cannot be shoved, pushed, or rolled aside. If that all sounds too combative for you, you know what? That's fine. Celebrating disability pride doesn't have to be a confrontation. Simply going out, if it's safe for you to do so, can be an act of disability pride. Being visible in the community matters. Reminding people that we're here matters. Simple conversation helps. I mean, earlier in this episode, Lainey told the story of that graduation party she went to on an uneven lawn with no tables and all sorts of other just challenges given her disabilities. Now, the host probably wasn't trying to purposely exclude disabled folks. It simply wasn't something that occurred to them. Now, you see, our presence and sharing our experiences with others in public formats like podcasts and theater and in private one-on-ones like personal chats or group conversations can expand the views of the temporarily abled so that these issues can be ones that they see and can think about and can act on. And it's also a chance for those of us who identify as disabled to reflect on our own internal ableism and how that affects others with similar or different disabilities. Many of us in our own lives and recoveries may be harboring preconceived notions about what a disabled person is and what they can do or how they should act. Limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves will limit what we are able to do. More insidiously, they can limit what we imagine is possible and can prevent us from even asking the question, is this possible? Once you can ask that question, is this possible? Then you open up a whole world of opportunities and possibilities and adventures in life. So celebrate or recognize Disability Pride Month in a way that makes sense to you. Share your story, be visible, advocate for change, support a friend, or just take a few moments to reflect on what disability pride means to you. Because ultimately, there is no shame in being disabled. To learn more about the work that Lainie is doing, visit the Trendable website or listen to the Embrace It podcast. You can find all those over at trendable.com or just go to the show notes at strokecast.com/trends. Share this episode with someone you care about by giving them the link, strokecast.com/trends. An occupational therapist may be particularly interested in this discussion. The first issue of the free monthly Strokecast email newsletter goes out on July 6th. Be sure to sign up at strokecast.com/news. And of course, as always, don't get best. Get better. Thanks a lot. I'm Bill Monroe, and I'll talk to you soon.
The Strokecast, Bill Monroe, and Bill's guests provide general information and entertainment, not medical advice. Please do not make any changes to your treatment plan or the execution of your treatment plan without first consulting your personal doctor or medical team. The Strokecast is a proud production of the Currently Speaking Podcast Network.